Imagine a world whose surface collapsed in on itself, not from war, not from impact, but from its own geology. This is Calibus B, a fractured moon, a world reborn. Join us on this journey as we trace the major events that shaped its destiny. From oceans that once covered its surface to the collapse that carved its jagged terrain, we will witness how life endures, adapts, and thrives through each transformation. This is Calibus B, a moon, bound to a colossal gas giant. Together they orbit a star slightly smaller than our Sun, a star whose light is softer, yet whose influence is profound. Calibus B's orbit is stable and constant, a delicate balance between the gravity of its parent giant and the pull of its star. This equilibrium has endured for millennia, shaping the rhythms of its tides, its climate, and its destiny. For millions of years, Calibus B was a planet of water. Its surface was submerged beneath a vast ocean, deep, stable, and ancient. Beneath these waters, the crust was made of porous limestone, forming immense caverns. These hollow structures stretched for miles, hidden beneath the waves, stabilized only by the weight of the ocean. In this submerged world, life found a way. Unicellular organisms, fragile, plant-like creatures, began to emerge. They were simple, yet remarkable. These cells depended entirely on ocean currents to survive. They lacked the proteins needed to regulate their own energy production, so they drifted, carried by the flow between light and darkness. When exposed to the star's rays, they performed photosynthesis, a chemical reaction that flooded them with energy. But without internal control, they risked overloading. To survive, they had to keep moving. The currents became their lifeline, pushing them from the illuminated surface down into the shadowed caverns. Over time, they evolved unique shapes, elongated, feathered structures designed to catch the flow, to be propelled as far as possible despite their microscopic size. This constant circulation gave the ocean a strange hue. At times, the waters shimmered with green, a sign of these drifting life forms absorbing light and releasing energy. But this ecosystem was fragile. These organisms had adapted to a world of perfect balance, stable temperatures, consistent currents, predictable light cycles. Their evolution had slowed, paused by the comfort of their environment. And now, as the planet begins to change, only a handful will survive. Most are not ready for what's coming. But Calibus B orbited dangerously close to its star. The radiation and heat were relentless. Over millennia, the ocean began to evaporate. Water vapor thickened the atmosphere, creating a greenhouse effect that accelerated the process. As the seas retreated, the balance shifted. The limestone crust, once stabilized by the ocean's weight, was left exposed. The planet was entering a critical phase of transformation. The collapse of Calibus B was not a single event. It was a slow, relentless unraveling, a planetary implosion unfolding over centuries. As the ocean vanished, the limestone crust lost its stabilizing weight. The caverns beneath, once filled with water and pressure, became hollow voids. The delicate balance that had held the planet together began to fail. At first, the changes were subtle. Small fissures appeared across the surface, cracks that widened with each passing decade. Entire regions sagged, sinking into the empty chambers below. Then came the great collapses. Massive sections of land plunged downward, swallowed by the hollow labyrinth beneath. Valleys deepened into chasms. The surface of Calibus B was reshaped, not by impact from the skies, but by the silent betrayal of its own foundation. The planet's geography transformed into a graveyard of ruins. The jagged peaks we see today are not mountains. They are the fossilized remains of stalagmites, once submerged beneath the ocean, towering pillars that supported the crust like ancient guardians. Now, exposed to the burning light of the star, they stand as monuments to collapse, silent witnesses to the destruction of a world. From collapse came the first fragile signs of renewal. The evaporation of the ocean left behind a new atmosphere, rich in minerals and moisture. And in this altered environment, life began again. At first, it was only unicellular organisms, the same drifting creatures that once depended entirely on currents to survive. But now, faced with a fractured and dry terrain, they began a slow and arduous transformation. Over countless generations, these cells adapted, evolving into plant-like forms. It was not a sudden leap, but a painstaking process. Each step forward was fragile, each adaptation hard-won. They learned to anchor themselves to the limestone, to stretch toward the light of the star, to harness photosynthesis more efficiently. Their anatomy changed, their chemistry refined, until they became the first vegetation of Calibus B. Yet this adaptation was far from perfect. Most of these organisms had evolved in a world of stability, where the ocean's balance had paused their progress for millennia. Now, confronted with a planet in upheaval, only a handful would endure. The rest would vanish, unable to keep pace with the changes. Still, from ruin, a new ecosystem was born. Green patches began to spread across the fractured valleys. Over time, the vegetation of Calibus B didn't just adapt, it merged with the terrain. Mosses crept along fractured ridges, painting the limestone in deep purples and rusted reds. Algae bloomed in the shallow basins where moisture lingered. Hardy vines anchored themselves into the jagged stalagmites, climbing upward like veins of life, reclaiming the stone. The plants followed the contours of collapse, filling crevices, wrapping around spires, and carpeting the valley floors. They didn't fight the terrain, they embraced it. And in doing so, they transformed a broken world into a living canvas. From above, the landscape resembles a tapestry of color and texture, a fusion of geology and biology. Beyond these skies lie realms stranger than imagination, worlds carved by fire, sculpted by ice, and illuminated by mysteries yet unseen. As Calibus B fades into the distance, we are reminded that every world holds its own story, a tale written in stone, water, and silence. But this is only the beginning. If you have enjoyed this first journey, stay with us, for the adventures ahead will take us deeper into the unknown to discover planets far more extraordinary than Calibus B. The voyage continues.